They are accused of leading a doomsday cult. They are accused of conspiring to murder 3 people. They are accused of funding their love affair with insurance money and stolen Social Security payments. Lori and Chad Daybell are married. Their spouse is dead, and her children murdered and buried in the yard. It's a crime prosecutors say was fueled by sex, money, and power. The power coming from their ability to convince their followers that the world was ending and dark spirits were taking over people's bodies. Bodies which needed to be killed. Lori has already been convicted of murdering her children and conspiring to murder Chad's first wife, Tammy. And now it's Chad's turn to face a jury. Will he be convicted of murdering his wife, Tammy? Will a jury believe he conspired to murder Lori's children? Tonight we are live from the courthouse with the latest from the courtroom, and we will focus on Chad and Lori's children. Did he ever meet them? Is there evidence he wanted them dead? We'll bring in our experts, break down the evidence as we continue our investigation of the Doomsday couple, Chad and Lori Daybell.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Here we are in the middle of this trial, in the middle of this story that is so out of left field, so bizarre that this could happen, but incredibly violent and tragic in the end. And make no mistake about it, Lori did it. Like, we watched that trial, we heard that trial, right? We heard the evidence, we know the evidence, and it doesn't seem that Lori Daybell at any point really was fighting the case. There was almost an acknowledgement, oh yeah, we did that, but it wasn't murder because of the spirits and the lightness and the darkness and everything else that was happening. And you got a feeling from Lori, from watching her reactions and listening to her at her sentencing, that her mind was somewhere else. It wasn't exactly in the courtroom as a criminal defendant facing the rest of your life in prison. It was somewhere else. And she would never turn on Chad, by the way. Never, ever, ever. But when you look at the evidence in that case, the evidence in this case can be very similar. There'll be some different evidence against Chad than against Lori, but you've got the same victims. And we understand the connection of Chad and Tammy, but how about the connection of Chad and Tylee and JJ? Did they even know Chad? How much of an interaction was there? Was there any connection? And we know that Lori was with Chad before her husband Charles died. We know that. That was established very clearly. In this case, it's happening, and it happened in the first trial. So there are time periods where Charles is alive, the children are alive, and Lori's with Chad. So how did that work? And is there a reason? Is there a connection between Chad and Lori's kids? And is there a reason why he would want them gone? That's going to be an important part of this trial. Really important part of this trial. Now, the most obvious connection to the deaths of these 2 children and Chad Daybell is where they were found. They're buried in his backyard. His house, his yard. All right? Chad's house, Chad's backyard, Lori's kids. So there's no way around any of all that. And at the moment that they're digging up those bodies, he's on the phone with Lori, seemingly a little concerned about the fact that they're digging up the yard and what they're going to find. Some level of consciousness of guilt when you listen closely to that phone call, which it was Lori calling Chad, by the way. It was just seemingly coincidental that at the moment, Chad's last few moments being free on the phone with Lori, talking about them digging up the backyard. So there is a connection there. But is there a motive? You understand the motive when it comes to a spouse being gone, but he hasn't been charged with the death of Charles Vallow. Lori has, but not Chad. Lori's charged with the death of Tammy, but is there a reason why he would want JJ and Tylee gone? And that's important, really important for prosecutors here. Today, another big day inside the courtroom. Let's take a look at some of those big moments.
Through care.com, did you ever meet a Lori Vallow?
Yes. So I posted a job listing that I wanted to nanny, and she replied to my listing, and we got in contact on the website, and then later messaged through text and set up a time for me to come meet her and her son JJ.
When you met with her, did she say anything about her husband?
She did. She mentioned, as we got to know each other, that they had just moved to Rexburg from Arizona and that her husband recently passed away from a heart attack, and that JJ was kind of struggling to understand that.
Did you have any further communications with Lori Vallow?
I did. So a couple days later, I messaged her again and asked when I could come back, and she said that JJ went with his grandparents for a month and that she was in Hawaii for a month, and that after that month had passed, I could reach out to her again to reschedule another time to babysit.
And did you ever try to do that?
I did. Yeah, I called her and texted her and never got a response back.
Did Alex Cox ever use the word zombie to describe JJ's erratic behavior?
No.
Did anyone in that house at the time, when JJ was acting up, use the word zombie?
No.
Do you know who Charles Vallow was?
Yes,
Who was he?
he was my stepfather.
And what was your relationship like with Mr. Vallow?
He was my dad.
How did you hear about him passing away?
My mom called me and told me that he had had a heart attack.
What happened? What was the first thing you saw when you got there?
Tylee opened the door and hugged me, and she was crying. And then I saw my Uncle Alex sitting on the couch with a bandage around his head. I asked him what was on his head, and he said that Charles had hit him in the head with a bat and that he had shot him in self-defense.
And is that how you learned how your stepdad died?
Yes.
Do you recall the last time you saw Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
When was that?
It was August 30th, and Tylee was crying and didn't say anything really. And I hugged JJ, and my mom said that they'd be back in a few weeks.
And joining us now, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft is live from Boise, Idaho, outside of the courthouse. Kelly, great to see you. We were just watching there some of the testimony of Colby Ryan. That's Lori's only surviving child, her oldest son. Tell us a little bit about his testimony today.
Well, hi there, Vinny. At times, Colby Ryan's testimony was a little bit emotional. He was talking about the number of times that his mother would lie to him. You just heard one right there in which his mother had told him that Charles Vallow died of a heart attack, which we found out later that Alex Cox ended up shooting him. That's what he says, in self-defense. Another time when Colby Ryan got emotional is when he was asked to identify a photo of his sister, Tylee Ryan, as well as JJ, and he paused for a very long time, especially when he was identifying the photo of Tylee. He got really choked up, and then he did say that that was his sister. He talked about one of the last conversations that he had with Tylee. This was at Yellowstone National Park, the last known sighting of JJ and Tylee alive, and this was in regard to Social Security payments that Tylee had been getting from her deceased deceased father. And he often talked about today in his testimony that he would receive money from Tylee. But then Tylee told him that the mother, Lori, was now handling that money. Let's listen to some of that testimony.
Did you receive or did you exchange text messages with Tylee Ryan on September 8th of 2019?
Yes.
What was the nature of that text exchange?
I think I had asked her to send money. And I think we had talked earlier that day a little bit. I didn't talk to her directly, but I had heard her voice and they said that they were on a trip. And I think I'd asked her for money. I think that's what it was.
Okay. And did she respond? Do you recall?
Yes.
What did she respond?
I don't remember what she said exactly. I remember her last text that she said was just, I love you and I love the girls.
And you said you heard her voice earlier that day. And how did you hear her voice?
She was in the background of my conversation with my mom.
Right. And did your mom tell you where they were?
She said they're at Yellowstone Park.
And when Colby was testifying, he was talking about the last known sighting of Tylee, not JJ. And so he really was going into this testimony about how their life was, how a lot of text messages that all of a sudden he started receiving from Tylee were different. Well, it turns out because Tylee was not the one that was actually texting him. It appears that Lori Vallow was the one that was actually texting him because Tylee was no longer alive. But during that trip to Yellowstone, that was Alex Cox, along with JJ and Tylee, and of course, Lori. And Vinny, some other notable things that stood out today when Colby Ryan was on the stand, talking about his mother lying, talking about how she just started to become very spiritual, and that he was asked on cross-examination by John Pryor if Chad Daybell, the involvement, and if Lori Vallow was influenced by anyone. And he kind of talked about that, but then on redirect, he was asked that again by John Pryor, or excuse me, by the state, and he said that Lori Vallow Daybell was 100% influenced by Chad Daybell.
That's, again, a huge part of this case. What role is Chad Daybell playing in all of this, and especially when it comes to Lori's kids? Those Social Security payments, huge, because prosecutor talked about power, money, and sex, and that's where the money comes into play. There was another witness today, someone who ends up in the middle of all this, David Warwick. Give us a little background about who he is and how he ends up being connected to Lori.
Absolutely, Vinny. And you see him right there. So he is married to Melanie Gibb, Lori Vallow Daybell's former best friend. She took the stand last week. Now, they were not married at the time, him and Melanie. And he talked about this on the stand today, how he was married to someone else, and then he ended up meeting Melanie, and they would have gatherings over at Lori Vallow Daybell's home. He was there one night. They were having some religious discussions. They also they did a podcast together, him and Lori did, and he started talking about the beliefs of Chad and Lori and how they were talking about being given special gifts and how they were the ones that were chosen to lead 144,000 people. And he did say that he questioned some of their beliefs, in particular about Satan's powers and how they were saying that Satan has the ability to push someone's soul out of their body, and he kind of disagreed with them, saying that Satan does not have that power. He also testified about a moment in the park where he said that Lori and Chad were talking about a building that they saw, but that no building was there. Let's listen to that testimony.
When you got to the park, what happened?
We just walked around the park and they described the building.
What did they describe?
About a two-story building made of stone and arches, and that's about all I can recall.
You don't recall any specifics about the significance of the building or anything like that?
I don't.
Could you see a building the same place they were saying it was located?
No,
What did you see?
a beautiful park.
Sir, could you tell if Chad and Lori thought the building was there?
They talked like they did, but I didn't feel any truth in it.
So, Vinny, that was really interesting when he said that. He didn't believe that there was really any truth, that actually Lori and Chad were believing what they were saying about seeing that building. And he also was asked about Chad's demeanor. He said he was very kind and meek. And one of the things we noticed inside the courtroom today was that when he was testifying, a lot of times, especially when he said he was very nice and meek, Chad Daybell would shake his head, would nod his head in agreement with a lot of David's testimony.
Okay, David Warwick is also an important witness because he's there the last night that JJ is seen, and what we believe the last night JJ was alive.
Yeah, he was, Vinny, and he talked about seeing Alex Cox holding JJ and bringing him upstairs. JJ was asleep, according to David, on his shoulder, on Alex's Cox's shoulder. And then he talked about how Lori was reacting because then he no longer saw JJ. Let's listen to some of that testimony.
So I just went to say goodbye to Lori and JJ. And Lori was in the kitchen, and she was a little dramatic. And I just said, well, we're leaving. I'd like to say goodbye to JJ. And she said, oh, he was out of control. And I had to have Alex come and get him. She just seemed really talking fast and nervous, just kind of. When I meant dramatic, she explained that he climbed up on the cabinets in the fridge and got on top of the upper cabinets. She had a picture of Christ on the upper cabinet, and he said that he went up there and pushed that down.
And Warwick testified that he did not notice any of this alleged damage that Lori was saying that JJ had caused, Vinny.
Paints a very, very vivid picture of Lori Daybell there. And again, she's been convicted already. The question is, can they tie Chad Daybell into all of this? Kelly Craft live in Boise tonight. Kelly, great to see you. Thanks so much. I want to bring in a special guest joining me in Salt Lake City, Utah, LDS historian and author of the book, Vengeance is Mine, The Mountain Meadows Massacre and Its Aftermath. Barbara Jones Brown is with us. Barbara, great to see you tonight. Let me ask you, the first time that you heard this story of Chad Daybell and Lori and the missing kids and the dead spouses and everything else and the alleged followers they had, what went through your mind?
Well, I first heard about it on NPR, and I just heard that 2 children were missing in Idaho, and I live here in Utah, and so I thought, well, that's nearby, that's tragic, that's really sad. And then as more and more details of the story came out, and you heard that that Lori and Chad supposedly were calling these children zombies who were possessed, and it just kept getting more and more bizarre. And then I heard that they were Latter-day Saints, and I thought, where is this coming from? And over time, I came to understand how they took core doctrines of the church. They were both lifelong Latter-day Saints, core doctrines that the church believes in, and then took them to this extreme, to the point that they're talking about zombies, for example, which is something that we just would never have heard of in terms of a religious belief. It's just a TV show. So it's been bizarre to follow this case over the years. Yeah.
Historically, have you come across any stories or cases or tragedies like this, where someone has taken the LDS core beliefs and taken them someplace where they were never intended to be?
Yes. So as a historian, I started digging, and I thought, where is this coming from? And I started digging into church history, and I found in some primary sources a splinter group, or a fringe group, if you will, of the LDS Church in the 1880s and the 1890s. And they believed in reincarnation, which is what Chad and Lori call multiple probations. But they believed in reincarnation, this fringe group, and they would give each other names. So they would say, oh, you used to be James, the brother of Jesus. You used to be this person from the Book of Mormon. You used to be George Washington, all of these great people in prior lives. And there was one man who was driving that fringe group. His name was Charles Stainer, but this Chad Daybell could have taken his playbook from this fringe group in the 1880s and 90s. They were doing the exact same thing. This group was condemned by top church leaders. They were called out in what is called General Conference and told to stop practicing this, but they kept it going for 10, 20 years. And it turns out that their leader of it, Charles Stainer, was doing it for sex, power, and money, all three of those things. He was milking his followers for money. He was trying to take plural wives or second wives. So that was astonishing to me to find a fringe group that was very similar to what Chad has been doing.
It's jaw-dropping. It's jaw-dropping. I wanted to take a listen to some testimony of Melanie Gibb, Lori's, Daybell's friend, but a real insider in all of this, talking about these, about Chad and Lori and how they met in a prior lifetime.
She told me that they had been married before in previous probations.
Is that when she first shared that information with you?
I believe she shared it with me in St. George. So it's between St. George and November she shared it.
Did she talk about going to the temple with Chad?
She did.
What did she tell you about that?
She told me that they were going to be resealed again like they had been in previous lives together.
And did she tell you that they in fact had gone to the temple?
Yes.
And that was in November, about a month after meeting each other.
That's right.
And she told you the purpose of that was so they could be sealed together again.
That's right.
At that time, was Charles still alive?
Yes.
And was Tammy still alive?
Yes.
Okay, so here they're talking about being sealed together again, but in their present lives, they're married. Is this... I'm trying to understand how they could twist and bend beliefs into, you know, hey, we can have affairs, it's no problem.
Yeah, so I should explain what sealings are in LDS parlance. It's another word for marriage, being married. But when you are sealed together, it's believed that you're married not only for this life, but also for the next life, so into eternity. So Latter-day Saint couples are married and sealed in temples by someone who is authorized to do that monogamously, and they have a marriage certificate. They follow the law. What Chad and Lori did, it sounds like, is they just went into the temple and they went and kind of considered themselves sealed by participating in this ceremony themselves. And they kind of made it up and said, we're sealed because we were married together in a prior life.
And then I think they got resealed down by the pool. They got resealed down by the pool in Hawaii. I mean, this is outrageous.
They're enjoying your honeymoon.
We're out of time for tonight, Barbara Jones-Brown, but I'm sure we're going to speak again. This trial is just getting started. Thank you so much. Great to see you. When we come back, we're going to talk about Chad's connection to Lori's kids, plus coming up next hour.
In Dayton, Ohio, a bizarre shooting and twisted extortion plot. An 81-year-old man shoots and kills an innocent Uber driver because he believes she is part of a group extorting him and threatening his family over the phone.
I need the sheriff and the ambulance real quick out here. There's been a shooting. Well, I shot her in the leg the first time, and I shot her in the shoulder.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it. It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious. After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The killer or cover-up murder trial. Live coverage begins this week, only on Court TV.
If I go back to February through March, February 1st through the end of March when Lori was in Hawaii, and she was at a place called Kauai.
Correct.
One of those islands over there.
Correct.
Okay, and she was with Tylee for at least a portion of that, right?
I believe Tylee, and I think she had a friend with her too. Tylee's friend and her.
Okay.
That's my memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but JJ was with the father, Charles, correct?
I would assume.
One of Lori's trips to Hawaii, she took Tylee. She disappeared for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. There was some bizarre behavior taking place. But what I want to focus on right now is the potential for Chad to interact with JJ and/or Tylee. Now, we know they met in October of 2018, and from that point until Charles dies, Chad rolls into Phoenix 3 different times. And at that time, Charles is spending a lot of time in Houston, so there is an opportunity that he could have potentially met Tylee and/or JJ on 3 of those trips, unless he and Lori were busy doing something else, right? Let's flash forward now. July 11th, 2019, that's when Charles is shot and killed by Alex Cox. But then in August of 2019, Melanie Gibb, David Warwick, Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreau, Zulema Pastines, and Chad Daybell are meeting at Lori's house in Arizona about the gathering of the 144,000. So there's another opportunity where Chad may have had some interaction with JJ and/or Tylee. August of 2019, Lori, Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreau, JJ, and Tylee moved to Rexburg, Idaho. Now they're much closer to Chad Daybell. September 8th, 2019 is the last known sighting of Tylee. September 22nd is the last known sighting of JJ. Melanie Gibb, David Warwick staying at Lori's home in Rexburg. But they came in contact with Alex Cox and Chad Daybell and JJ during that weekend. I want you to take a listen to Melanie Gibb talking about that, because this is a very specific moment where you're talking about interaction between Chad Daybell and JJ.
Did you ever observe any interactions between JJ and Chad while you were there?
Yes.
And what were those?
JJ seemed to be upset, and so Chad took him upstairs with him. He took him upstairs, and then after a period of time, he came back downstairs. I believe he was holding his hand, and that's what I observed with them.
Did you observe any injuries to Chad?
He had a red scratch on his neck.
Did he tell you how he got that?
I asked him, and he said that JJ had scratched him.
Had you seen many interactions between Chad and JJ before that?
No.
Let me bring in my guest. Joining us in Los Angeles, board-certified forensic psychiatrist, trial expert, witness, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. In Boise, Idaho, host of the Hidden True Crime podcast and YouTube channel, Lauren Matthias is with us. And in Salt Lake City, religious cult expert, retired police commander, host of Profiling Evil, and author of the book Deceived, Mike King is with us. Great to see everyone. Lauren, your thoughts about the interaction here between Chad Daybell and the kids, JJ, Tylee. I'm not sure if he ever met Tylee. He may have on one of those 3 trips to Phoenix.
I'm not sure if he ever met Tylee in Phoenix, but he certainly, I believe, met her before she was murdered. And then as far as that scratch on JJ's neck, I would just like to ask how a 7-year-old boy is able to scratch the neck of a man who's 6'3" tall. It's a very upsetting story to hear that Chad and JJ were alone upstairs. Allegedly, he was disciplining him, and he comes back injured on his neck. You can only imagine the worst, and who knows what these children went through before they were even murdered. But whether or not Tylee met Chad at an event at Lori's home, she certainly had meetings at her home as well in Mesa, Arizona, when Charles was out of town and Chad was actually spending the night with other people at her home for these religious conferences. So it wouldn't be beyond scope, to use a legal term here, that Tylee started to get to know who Chad was without knowing all the details.
Now, the other thing, Mike, when you think about this dynamic, we're talking about Chad disciplining Lori's child while he's still married to another woman with his own family.
Yeah, Vinny, I think the thing that I really get out of all of this, I'm not as concerned that there was a scratch on Chad's neck. If we look at the camp, that JJ may have been really unhappy and squirming and fighting, maybe with somebody that he wasn't familiar with. If you take Chad's story that he didn't really know this child very well, or it may be completely on the flip side, that he knew him well enough that he actually could take him upstairs and discipline him, give him a little bit of time out while there were guests in the home, and then getting him settled down, coming down and saying, look, you're going to go down and you're going to behave, and JJ giving in like children do. But it doesn't take away from a temper tantrum, or it could absolutely be that this child was trying to defend himself and fight for his own safety at that very moment. So the thing that I get out of all of this, with all my ramblings, Vinny, is that he had to have had a good relationship with JJ in order to be the one that would take him upstairs to get him in a little timeout and settle him down. And I don't believe if it was the first time he'd ever met him that would have ever happened.
I agree. Dr. Carol Lieberman, this dynamic is bizarre, but we're in the midst of this whole Doomsday Bell saga, so everything here is out of the norm. But for this little child, this had to be really frightening. Like, his whole world is turned upside down. I mean, he already had a tough life as a young child, was adopted by Charles and by Lori, and then Charles is gone, and then he's ripped up and moved out to the middle of nowhere in Idaho where he doesn't know anyone, and now this stranger or this man that he just met is disciplining him.
Well, you know, of course, we know that JJ was autistic and got into these, had these sort of temper tantrums or out of control tantrums. I don't know that means that there was something sort of inappropriate that went on, salacious that went on between JJ and Chad. But, you know, here he is. No little boy, it's hard for him to understand why another man would be coming into the house. And children, especially autistic children, are very sensitive to feelings that are going on. And so he might well have experienced, you know, not that he could describe it necessarily, but he could have well have felt that that Chad represented a threat, and that Chad, you know, liked his mother, and so I don't think, you know, the thing is that Chad really, I don't think that he was made much effort to try to connect to either of the children to whatever extent that he was with them, because that wasn't what he was interested in. He just cared about Lori and about their time together. And, you know, only to the extent that maybe making nice to the kids would make her like him more. But I don't think he was, you know, he wasn't a warm fuzzy.
No, I would not. That's one word I would not use to describe, or two words I would not use to describe Chad Daybell. Everyone staying where they are. Our guests will be with us when we come back. We're going to talk about motive. Is there some argument, some reason why Chad Daybell would want those two innocent children dead?
Tens of thousands of text messages, right?
Yes.
Right. I didn't see in any of these, and if you have them in the other 10,000 that you went through, show me the one that says, hey, this is Chad. Let's kill the kids.
Objection, Your Honor.
Show me the text. It says, let's kill the kids.
Well, that is argument, Mr. Pryor. If you want to ask if there's a text, that would be different.
Is there a text that says, let's kill the kids?
There are several texts that talk in detail about the deaths of those two children, yes.
John Pryor, there is no text message, right, that says, let's let's kill the kids. I mean, that would be your first piece of evidence in the case. That's how you would start this whole thing up. It doesn't necessarily exist. You've got to, like, put some pieces together here. Take a listen to Melanie Gibb here. Important testimony talking about lightness and darkness, which seems to be the key to all of this. Someone turns dark, they got to go. They got to go. That's the way it works in this cult. Take a listen.
Who was it that would label someone dark or a zombie again?
Chad.
And even, and once someone was labeled a zombie or dark, what was going to happen to their body? As Chad and Lori taught it.
If they could cast the evil spirit out, the body would naturally die.
So if someone was dark or a zombie, they were going to die?
Yes.
Do you recall if Lori ever said anything to you in relation to Tylee and whether or not what her level was or her rating?
She did say she was dark at some point. I don't remember the rating.
Do you know who gave her that information?
I'm guessing it was Chad. I don't remember.
Generally speaking, would she tell you she turned to Chad for these answers?
Yeah.
Did Lori talk to you about JJ while you were there?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She told me that the day before I arrived that he became dark.
So previously she'd told you Tylee was dark?
Correct.
Yeah. And now JJ was dark?
Correct.
Did you observe JJ that weekend?
Yes.
Did you observe any behaviors that caused you concern?
No.
This lightness and darkness, Mike King, I want to start with you because, you know, you're supposed to naturally die, right? Naturally. These aren't natural deaths that we're talking about. We're talking about a gunshot to kill Charles Vallow. We're talking about Tylee's remains in the pet cemetery. What are your thoughts here about how this is being sold and who's doing the selling?
It's feeling more and more like not only deep planning and premeditation, but a scheme is coming together. We're seeing the means, motive, and opportunity, Vinny, the things that we talk about. If we looked at this case purely from a circumstantial perspective, we see, and we've had testimony that Chad Daybell is the one determining who's light and dark. That's very significant in my opinion. And whether Lori becomes the middleman to Alex Cox or they're all in this together, that every time somebody is, or not every time, most times when someone's channeled and determined to be dark, Charles Vallow, Tammy Daybell, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Alex Cox, they die. And so as we start putting the pieces together, it's pretty darn easy to start saying, hey, somebody's making the determination that these people are dark, and dark people somehow become the subject of castings like we talked about a few nights ago. And those castings determine that a spirit has to be extruded or exorcised from the body. And the only thing that can happen, according to Melanie Gibb, is that once that spirit is out of the body, the evil spirit, that the body's got to die. And so we see this whole plan coming together. And then that doesn't even begin to mention the windfall from a financial perspective.
Well, that's what I'm going to talk about that, right? So, Lauren Matthias, they talk about money, power, and sex. No kids, there's going to be more sex, right? No kids, those Social Security, especially if you don't report the death, right? The Social Security payments from the death of their fathers continue to roll in. So you got 2 out of 3 right out of the bat with the children gone.
Absolutely. And then you can also throw in power just to conclude. And you see that someone who can create a light and dark system that gets rid of the 2 children that won't give him more power and more sex is quite powerful. So money and power, sex is that's pretty accurate. Those 3 things are the motives when it comes to this, if that's the direction that the prosecution is going, and it is. They will receive, Chad and Lori both will receive the money for their visionary little crew. They'll receive the power and Chad will get plenty of sex without two kids around. I hope that the jury, in my honest opinion, sees the writing on the wall and sees this for what it is.
So, Dr. Carol Lieberman, this has been an issue we've talked about throughout this story and cases. We've been covering it for years now. Light and dark. And is it Chad basically with some level of plausible deniability saying, you're dark, you're light, and then kind of turns his head, whatever happens, happens? Or do you think it's Lori who is determining the lightness and darkness of her own children without Chad manipulating her, and she's just trying to speed up the process? What are your thoughts there?
Well, if you remember when we talked about it before with her trial, I was talking about how it was a folie à deux, how they connect together perfectly and make each other, do things that are a little crazy or a little more, maybe that they wouldn't have thought of to do by themselves. But, in today's trial, the texts were really amazing. I mean, that is a very interesting part of this case because it shows how manipulative they each were of each other. Chad would say, I'm going to leave you alone now. And of course, that fed into her borderline fear of abandonment. And so then she would come back and send him pictures of her in a bathing suit. And then she would talk about, how she can't be with him anymore with, he's not going to be with her. He's with his family and all of that. They were on a trip. And if he should go back and give love to his family and she'll leave him alone. I mean, they were just playing into each other's psychopathology. They didn't want to leave each other. They didn't want to be abandoned by each other. And so it was so easy to just manipulate. Like, in other words, if you take away the zombies, if you take away the zombies and all of that stuff, it's just like any relationship, except that they have a lot of psychopathology.
Absolutely. We're out of time for tonight, but the trial continues. Dr. Carol Lieberman, Lauren Lethesius, the Hidden True Crime Podcast, Mike King, of course, Profiling Evil, and the book Deceived. We'll see you again really, really soon.